always love the adjectives you're using for all the devotees, Anand Bihari Prabhu. Queen of Smiles, so many just great adjectives there. Just we can learn a lot actually from it.
From
Um,
Jamina Jai, for sure. From just that smile alone, I can learn everything I need to know for the day.
it's true, it's true. It's a nice mood. Okay, so we are reading from the 11th canto. Just going to put this up on the screen here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is the 11th canto, second chapter, fifth verse. So just picking up from where we've been reading in this section of the Bhagavatam. I'll just share the Sanskrit very briefly, and then we'll go into the translation and the purport. Bhutanam devacharitam dukhaya cha sukhaya cha sukhaiva hi sadhunam dvadrasham achyutatmanam. Translation: the activities of demigods lead to both misery and happiness for living beings. But the activities of great saints like you, he's speaking of Narad Muni. This is the conversation between Vasudeva and Narad Muni that we're here, that we're reading, who have accepted the infallible Lord as their very soul, result only in the happiness of all beings. We'll repeat that one more time. The activities of demigods lead to both misery and happiness for living beings. But the activities of great saints like you, who have accepted the infallible Lord as their very soul, result only in the happiness of all beings. Purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This verse clearly states that the pure devotees of the Lord, such as Narad Muni, are saintly persons to be considered superior even to the demigods, the living beings empowered by the Supreme Lord to administer the entire universe. In the Bhagavad Gita 3.12, it is stated, demigods in charge of the various necessities of life, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But one who enjoys these gifts without offering them in return to the demigods is certainly a thief. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada has made the following comment regarding the demigods. The demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and other blessings for maintaining the body and the soul of all living entities are entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in the different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasure and displeasure depend on the performance of yajnas by the human being. In other words, by the Lord's arrangement, material prosperity depends upon the satisfaction of the demigods. If the demigods are dissatisfied due to non-performance or improper performance of sacrifice, they are empowered to impose various types of suffering upon human beings. Usually the suffering takes the form of either excessive or insufficient supply of material necessities. For example, sunshine is necessary for life, but if there's excessive heat or insufficient heat from the sun, we suffer. Excessive or insufficient rain is also a cause of suffering. Thus the demigods bestow either happiness or suffering upon human beings in accordance with the performance of sacrifice. As stated here, however, great and saintly persons such as Narad Muni are always merciful to all living beings. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, and he abides by the scriptures. And all his characteristics are sublime. Bhagavatam 3rd Canto, 25th chapter, 21st verse. Srila Prabhupada, in his commentary on this verse, has portrayed the sadhu as follows. A sadhu is described above as is a devotee of the Lord. His concern, therefore, is to enlighten people in devotional service to the Lord. That is his mercy. He knows that without devotional service to the Lord, human life is spoiled. A devotee travels all over the country, door to door, preaching. Be Krishna conscious, be a devotee of Lord Krishna. Don't spoil your life in simply fulfilling your animal propensities. Human life is meant for self-realization or Krishna consciousness. These are the preachings of a sadhu. He is not satisfied with his own liberation. He always thinks about others. He is a most compassionate personality toward all the fallen souls. One of his qualifications, therefore, is he is Karunika, great mercy to the fallen souls. While engaged in preaching work, he has to meet with so many opposing elements, and therefore, the sadhu or devotee of the Lord has to be very tolerant. Someone may ill-treat him because the conditioned souls are not prepared to receive the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. They do not like it. That is their disease. The sadhu has the thankless task of impressing upon them the importance of devotional service. Sometimes devotees are personally attacked with violence. Lord Jesus Christ was crucified. Srila Haridas Thakur was caned in 22 marketplaces. And Lord Chaitanya, his principal assistant, Nityananda, was violently attacked by Jagai and Madai. But still, they were tolerant because their mission was to deliver the fallen souls. One of the qualifications of a sadhu is that he's very tolerant and merciful to all fallen souls. He is merciful because he is a well-wisher of all living entities. He is not only a well-wisher of human society, but a well-wisher of the animal society as well. It is said here, Sarva Dehinam, which indicates all living entities who've accepted material bodies. Not only does a human being have a material body, but other living entities, such as cats and dogs, also have material bodies. The devotee of the Lord is merciful to everyone, the cats, dogs, trees, etc. He treats all living entities in such a way that they can ultimately get salvation from this material entanglement. Shivananda Sain, one of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya, gave liberation to a dog by treating him transcendentally. There are many instances where a dog got salvation by association with a sadhu, because a sadhu engages in the highest philanthropic activities for the benediction of all living entities. Although the sadhu is not inimical toward anyone, the world is so ungrateful that even a sadhu has many enemies. What is the difference between an enemy and a friend? It is a difference in behavior. A sadhu behaves with all conditioned souls for their ultimate relief from material entanglement. Therefore, no one can be more friendly than the sadhu in relieving a conditioned soul. A sadhu is calm, and he quietly and peacefully follows the principles of scripture, at the same time as a devotee of the Lord. One who actually follows the principles of scripture must be a devotee of God, because all the Shastras instruct us to obey the orders of the personality of Godhead. Sadhu, therefore, means a follower of scriptural injunctions and a devotee of the Lord. All these characteristics are prominent in a devotee. A devotee develops all good qualities of the demigods, whereas a non-devotee, even though academically qualified, has no actual good qualifications or good characteristics according to the standards of transcendental realization. Vasudev, therefore, has used the word sadhu to describe Narad Muni, indicating that the position of the devotee of the Lord is superior even to that of the demigods. All right. Wonderful translation and verse and purport. So many wonderful points here. I'll read the translation one more time. The activities of the demigods lead to both misery and happiness for the living beings, but the activities of great saints like you, Narad Muni in this case, who have accepted the infallible Lord as their very soul, result only in the happiness of all beings. Om Gyanti Midandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vancha Kalpa Trubhasya Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's an honor to be here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Awesome. Okay, it's an honor to be here and to be with all the devotees. I'll just share a few points. There's so many wonderful points in this verse, this conversation that is just beginning in this chapter, the second chapter, the 11th canto, between Vasudeva and Narada Muni, and a lot more to be shared as we go through this chapter. And I'll just share some brief points and then we'll open it up for comments, questions, thoughts, as we usually do. Now in this conversation, there's an interesting, and I'll kind of focus my points for this class around the distinction between the pure devotees, the sadhus, and the demigods. There's a distinction being made here. And the position of a true devotee, a sadhu, is being very clearly asserted and stated. And I'll kind of focus on the first part of just the activities of the demigods, this portion. The activities of the demigods, they lead to both misery and to happiness for living beings. And then the activities of the sadhus only lead to happiness. And there's, what is the meaning behind this, or how can we look at this? I was thinking in a couple different ways that we can see different examples. There's so many examples in the Bhagavatam, actually, of both of these points, actually. And the first would be talking about the demigods as we compare them to the devotees. And we can see here that the activities of the demigods can, throughout the Bhagavatam and in so many different stories in our Vedic wisdom and culture, and in the Mahabharata, from the Ramayana as well, that the activities of the demigods provide some level of happiness, material happiness particularly. And then there's also misery that follows that. For example, a couple I think a couple months ago, we were on the topic of Vritrasura and the story of Lord Shiva giving him a boon to be able to, he had sacrificed his body and he had this boon finally that he achieved from Lord Shiva after doing some very heavy duty, intense, quite strange tapasya. And Lord Shiva appeared to him and gave him the boon that when he would touch anyone's head, that he could kill them. And then he decided, Vritrasura, to use this boon on Lord Shiva. And then we know the whole story of how Krishna saves him, Lord Shiva, from this demon. We also see examples of Lord Shiva, even in the story of Ravana. And Lord Shiva is definitely not necessarily a demigod. He's in a very special position. So we must really respect that. But we can see that Ravan we just celebrated Diwali and Dussehra and Vijayadashmi just a few weeks back. And Diwali was just this past week. But we can see Ravan was very much a student or devotee of Lord Shiva. He's a great devotee of Lord Shiva. We also see Lord Brahma in the story of Prahlad and Nrsimha. And we see that Lord Brahma actually grants Hiranyakashipu, after him performing severe tapasya and penance, he grants him these, not even just one boon, a variety of boons that becomes, an incredible problem for the demigods to manage. And practically, Hiranyakashipu is like the Lord of the universe. And Lord Indra and the demigods are so afraid of him. And it takes, and of course it's the Lord's pastime, but it takes all the demigods actually appealing to the Lord that we need you to do something about this person. I mean, it's too much. And so we can see these examples from these examples that really, and this point has been made so many times, but just to reiterate that the relationship that's being also made in the purport that we have with the demigods, or the empowered servants of the Lord, we can say, is that if we perform some level of tapasya or some level of sacrifice, that they reciprocate with a certain benediction or material arrangement or situation they give us. And so there's a very you could say kind of straightforward linear transactional relationship that occurs between the demigods and the jivas, on this planet. Um, and so that's where the happiness comes from from the demigods, that they can give us different arrangements, different boons, different benedictions, if we do the right thing, if we please them, right? Even the story of, we just celebrated Govardhan Puja on Wednesday, a few days back. And the way that story, that Leela starts is that um, the residents of Raj under Nanda Maharaj are worshiping, they're going to be worshiping Indra, right? Because Indra is providing the rains that give the harvest for all the food and the grains that are being enjoyed by the residents of Raj. And Krishna actually switches the whole thing around. Why are we worshiping Indra? And that begins the story, and he becomes very upset at this snub, and therefore the whole pastime of the lifting of Govardhan Hill occurs, where Indra sends torrential downpour, and it's mentioned in this verse that we can see, and we can see it even now in our planet, that when there's excess supply and too little supply, that becomes very, very challenging, and it creates tremendous suffering in this world. And so we actually need a balance. We don't need too much, too little. So too much heat is a challenge, is a lot of suffering. Too little heat also provides a lot of suffering. And so we just need just enough. Same thing with the rain. Too much rain, like what happened when Indra got very upset. Of course, Krishna saved the residents by lifting the Govardhan Hill for 7 days. But too much rain causes tremendous suffering. We see that in the world, whether it's hurricanes, um, earthquakes, there's so many different natural phenomenon. And then too little rain also creates severe drought and famine. So both sides of it are very challenging. Um, and this so that this is the happiness, and the misery also comes from we talked about that just now. The misery also comes from what the demigods give. And it comes in two ways. We talked about one where too little, too much. And that is also known as Adi Devik. There's three types of suffering that are stated in the Vedic texts in the Shastra. Is Adhyatmic, Adhibautic, and Adhidevik. And Adhidevik means that the suffering that comes from the demigods, from natural events that are controlled by these empowered representatives of the Lord. And so that's the first type. And the second type of suffering, or misery, that comes from this interaction with these empowered representatives of the Lord, is that when we are given these boons by the demigods, eventually they will not give us happiness, kind of putting it in a gentle way. Eventually, they won't give us happiness. Anything that we get in this world, if we're deriving some level of material pleasure from it, eventually it will give us pretty much an equal amount of distress, especially when we're identifying with it in a way of, particularly from a material vantage point. We look at our relationships, the same relationships, same friendships that give us so much joy and elation and pleasure, those same relationships can be the very source of suffering in so many different ways, whether it's, you know, us identifying with the body and then someone leaves their body, right? It could be a relationship and that we're, a friend of ours, and then this person loves us one day and then they don't love us another day and they betray us and they become inimical toward us, right? This happens very frequently. And so we can see that just that one relationship can actually provide so much pleasure, but it can also provide so much suffering. Same thing with we look at our material possessions, we look at our body, we look at even our car, let's say. We have a wonderful car and it is providing so much happiness. I have this vehicle, I can show it off, I can get to point A to point B. And then a couple of years later, maybe we get into an accident and it becomes a tremendous source of suffering. Maybe this car breaks down and we get stuck and stranded. Maybe, so many different things can happen that this one thing can become a source of one pleasure at some point, but also suffering at another point. And this is the kind of material law, unfortunately, because everything is temporary in this world. So whatever gives happiness eventually gives distress. And that's actually the issue. And this is kind of brings me to the crux of the point here that I wanted to make, that the Lord and his devotees, the sadhus, the reason why their association is even more coveted and dear to the heart than the demigods is because there are ever well-wishers. Srila Prabhupada, whose disappearance day was yesterday, that we celebrated, he used to sign all his letters as your ever well-wisher because the sadhus, they don't need anything from us. They don't want anything from us. The demigods, they want some level of sacrifice, tapasya, some offering to them. And there's this exchange, and some of it can be there's ego that is there, right? The demigods feel that we should please them, and that's also part of the material existence. That's definitely there. But the sadhus, they don't have this any level of false ego, and they're actually just working for our benefit. And the challenge with the relationship, the transactional relationship with the demigods, is that they can give us things that are not necessarily good for us. They're not necessarily our well-wishers. They give us what we want if we've done enough to get what we want, right? So it's like if we went into um, a drugstore and we have a certain ailment and we have the money, we come in, we give the money to the counter, to the pharmacist, or whatever the case might be, and we get the product, right? The pharmacist is not necessarily thinking, does this person actually need this? They've come in 4 times this week. Perhaps there's some level of addiction here, or something could be happening. They're not necessarily thinking about that. More, there's a transaction, right? Okay, they have the prescription, they have the money. Here we go, and they get the product. Um, Versus when we look at the Krishna and the sadhus, they are giving us things based off what they think is best for us and what they know is best for us, not even what they think, what they know is best for us. And so when we look at the demigods, they often give us things that we want, but often what we want is not what is actually good for our growth. It's not good for our growth. If a devotee is sincere, Krishna looks at multiple things, and the Vaishnavas also. But when Krishna gives us something, when he sees that we want something, Krishna is looking at a number of factors. The first is, what can we handle? What can we handle? Sometimes we want a certain success or we want, you know, something, and it's actually not good for us. He also looks at what is best for us long term and what will bring us closer to him and help us develop spiritually. Krishna looks at it from these three factors. And the Vaishnavas, because they hold the Lord so dear in their heart, in this verse, the word is used. Um, um, Let me just go back to the verse really quickly. The word that's used is achutatmanam, achutatmanam, that those who've accepted the Chuta, the infallible Supreme Lord, as their very soul, right? They're so in touch with Krishna in their heart. So they're also following in this step of being our well-wishers. So Krishna looks at these three things. What can we handle? What is best for us long-term to grow? And what will help us bring him closer to him and his devotees? And in some cases, and this is a very interesting point, that if we really want something really, really badly, even if it's not good for us, sometimes Krishna will give it to us, but in such a way that we never want it again. That we never want it again. And this is a sort of purification that Krishna is allowing us to receive. I was just recently speaking to a friend of mine who he's done very well in his career, and he's been going through some pretty strong health crises and issues and challenges. And we were just reflecting, and he's done very well for himself to where he's in his early, kind of early part of his life. Think about it, but I think his mid 30s to kind of early 40s, that area. And he was mentioning to me that he, if he didn't have to, he wouldn't have to work if he really didn't want to. He could not work for the rest of his life because he's done very well in his career. Um, and he's made a lot of money. And he was saying that at one point that was really his goal. Like he really wanted to make so much financially, so he felt independent, comfortable, secure, and all of that. But he was saying that we were sharing some reflections from the last few years, and he was saying something very interesting to me that he said that Krishna gave me what I wanted in that a few years back I was really focused in on building my wealth. But he said that the way he gave it to me, it was in such a way that I never wanted again, never wanted again, and I don't want to go through what I did to get to where I got to. And so we can see that can be the example here that sometimes Krishna will give us something, but then make sure that as we get what we wanted, that we lose the taste for that very thing. But again, it's all to help us move toward a deeper level of spiritual growth and existence. So the point here, saying it in kind of 5 different ways here, is that the demigods will give us what we want if we pay the price for it. But as a loving father, Krishna will not necessarily do the same thing. He looks at what's helpful for us, what will be beneficial for us. And if we really push, he'll try to help us get to what we want, but in a way that we will be purified as a result of that. Because at the end of the day, Krishna is eager to give us everything we want and need, but he wants to see that we can use it in devotional service and not be distracted or deluded by it. Sometimes we get power, we get name, fame, we get adoration, we get a lot of wealth, possessions, whatever the case might be. And it becomes a distraction, if we're really honest. It becomes a distraction. And sometimes we can say, oh, we want to use this in service. We want to, serve the devotees, want to serve the temple, serve the community. But underneath that, if we're really honest, it's more about us. It's more about our false ego than it is about serving. We kind of use that maybe sometimes as a external. And also that there's also a point here that Krishna's plan for us, sometimes Krishna will even give us, materially speaking, a lot of failure up front, a lot of challenges, a lot of purification, because his long-term plan for us is beautiful. It's so much bigger than what we think, what we know, what we can even conceive, actually. I was recently listening to a lecture, and I'll just wrap up soon with one or two points in this regard. I was recently listening to a lecture by His Holiness Radhanath Swami, and he was speaking about Srila Prabhupada, and I think it's apt to share this, uh, given that it was his disappearance day yesterday, and actually every day we want to speak about Srila Prabhupada. Um, but he was sharing how in 1953, many years before Prabhupada came to New York City and started ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada had actually, the precursor to ISKCON was a League of Devotees. And before he had come, he went to the U.S. He settled in Jhansi, which is in Uttar Pradesh, a few hours south of Vrindavan, actually. Um, and he started a society called the League of Devotees. And he put so much time, energy, effort um, to start something. And Jhansi was not necessarily a massive city, um, but he saw there was some potential. Srila Prabhupada saw there was some potential there to preach and to create something that could spread. And this was a time where the Gaudiya Math was going through some very tumultuous period after the passing of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada was trying to start something different, not from his guru, but from what was going on with the fighting within Gaudiya Math. And he spent so much time, energy, resources, money, and painstakingly got this building in Jhansi to where he could do programs and have satsangs and kirtans and give classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam and Gita. And after, I believe, I think it was about a year or two, but it wasn't very long. And he put so much effort into this project. Um, the building got taken over by someone else, and they evicted Srila Prabhupada from the building. And so when we look at this, kind of just condensing this timeline here, it kind of looks like from a material perspective, Maharaj was making this point when he was sharing it, that from a material perspective, it looked like an absolute failure. That Srila Prabhupada went to this place, started something, put so much energy and effort into it, and nothing really materialized out of it. And eventually, Prabhupada he moved to Mathura and Vrindavan and stayed there. And this is before he ended up coming on the Jaladuta to the US. But we can see, so on one level, on the material level, it was a failure. But on a spiritual level, it was completely not that at all. Because if we look at it from a spiritual perspective, Krishna was just preparing Srila Prabhupada for something much, much bigger. And him coming to the West and bringing the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Vaishnava Acharyas to a very, very interesting place in the world. And all of us are here today because of that, right? And Maharaj is making the point that if Srila Prabhupada had succeeded in Jhansi, maybe we would have never had the opportunity to experience Prabhupada in the West and him coming to save all of us, right? So sometimes and we have to have this faith that sometimes things don't work out for the better. And especially if we're in the mood of service to Shri Sri Radha Muralidhar. And I'm saying this for myself because I need to hear this right now as well. I think all of us need to hear this in one way, shape, or form. And if you need to hear this, then I'm grateful to be able to share this because I have found in my life that sometimes we have our plans, we have our version of what success looks like, what our desires are, and sometimes those things don't work out. And it can be discouraging of, okay, well, I thought I was going to be doing this. Krishna, why is Krishna not facilitating that? The demigods might facilitate that. But again, we know that the sadhus and Achyuta, Krishna are infallible and they are ever well wishers and they want what's best for us. And so that's not short term, that's long term. They're looking at a long term. Just like a loving father, if a child is screaming and crying that I want pizza and ice cream every meal, that's what I want. Right. And if we allowed the kids to do what they wanted to do, that's what they would want probably. But we know as a loving father that knows, okay, this is not good for your health long term. For a day or two, maybe, but long term, it's not. And so we have to have that trust and faith um, that Krishna is providing in that way. And those who are sadhus, like Narad Muni in this case, who is um, so dear to Krishna. And I was thinking that this word Achyutatmanam is so special because one, the devotees have the Lord in their heart, and the Lord has the devotees in his heart. And so there's such a connection to the Lord that they can also give us guidance based off what the Lord would want for us. So I wanted to kind of end off there. I made it many different points. We just really talked about how there's the demigods, the devotees. We talked about how really the relationship with the demigods can be based off kind of this transactional tapasya yagya, where we do something and we receive a certain benediction or boon. And that can be beneficial for us or provide us some level of happiness short term, but often long term, it may not be what's really needed for our spiritual growth. And because it's temporary and not for our ultimate good, it provides misery. We talked about Adi Devik, how through the natural causes also there can be suffering, the demigods. How Krishna looks at kind of three different factors of what helps us, what we can handle, what's best for our spiritual success. And sometimes Krishna will give us something if we really want it, but in a way that we never want it again. And so honestly, it's best not to push it too much and just to lean into what we can see Krishna wants us to do. We talked about the example of Srila Prabhupada and how in Jhansi, Prabhupada looked like an apparent material failure, but was actually a great spiritual success and a precursor to what Prabhupada did in his mission to serve his guru. And how the sadhus are looking at much more than what we can see, and there are ever well-wishers. So we should, the question I wanted to end off this class with that everyone can reflect on is, who are your ever well-wishers in your life? We have Srila Prabhupada. Of course, we know that he's there always in our corner. And who are some other well-wishers in your life that you want to keep and cherish close to your heart? Think about that deeply, and that maybe that can be a meditation or reflection as we end this class. So I want to thank everyone for your time, and we'll open it up for any questions, comments, and thoughts.
Thank you very much, Anuj Prabhu. Wonderful class. Thank you for summarizing everything for our Kali Yuga memory span. Thank you. Adipurusha Prabhu, followed by Jamunajaya.
We should probably let Jamunajaya speak first.
Jamunajaya.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Anuj. I was so excited to see your name pop up. Thank you so much for class and making it so clear. And this, I've been deeply meditating, helping a friend go through something about getting what is actually need, or what you were saying, getting something in a way that you don't want it anymore so much. And so something I was reflecting on, I do this work in hospitals for children, and the kids want to feel well. They want to feel well, but they don't understand when the doctor comes in that what they're doing for them is good. I see it all the time. They look at the doctors like they're demons, and they look at me. I've just come in to like walk into a wall and do something stupid to make them laugh. They look at me like I'm the savior, and I'm not. I'm just diverting them. And so I think about that all the time, as like there's the diversion, but then there's what's actually good for you, and the kids don't get it, that what that doctor is doing is actually good for you. And so thank you for really saying that so well, because that's what we get diverted by, the sparkly material things that maybe aren't our well-wishers we think we want, and we're not actually seeing that sometimes in that struggle, like Gurudev recently wrote, it's how clam makes pearls. It's through irritation. And he said recently so beautifully that the wound is as precious as the pearl. And it's not just the pearl because it's what comes out of it. So thank you so much as always for making the class very clear and wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Just trying to share any little realizations that I'm having, but thank you. That's such a wonderful point around the pearls and the irritation. I'm gonna steal that if you don't mind, obviously from Maraj. But that's such a nice point. Thank you.
He'd be happy that you did.
This is how transcendental copyright works. Adi Purusha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful class, very clear. We may desire Krishna's arranging. Krishna so wonderfully gives us a choice of who we approach and what we ask for. And our own perception of what's good for us isn't always accurate. We have wants, but then there's actually what's beneficial. And the sadhus, they engage us in devotional service to Krishna. They're not just pandering to our selfish desires. And we know how it is with children. If a child is spoiled brat, it's very difficult telling children. We had this one, what's his name? Father Joseph. We went over his house and he had his toddler son was watching this video, and in the video it said, how does the cat go? Meow, meow. How does the dog go? Woof, woof. How does the cow go? Moo, moo. How does your mother go? No, no, no. So it's difficult to be offering the yama and nama and the niyama, what to do and what not to do to the uncontrolled senses of the child. But if we don't, then the child becomes, the selfishness is enhanced and the child is spoiled and they're miserable because there's no love there. So engaging children or the sadhu engaging us in the service of Krishna is to our benefit. And it can be done palatably. It can be done in a beautiful and effective way. Krishna will help us to do that. We have to have a clearer vision if we're going to step into the role of somebody like Narada Muni. We have to remember that we're not just pandering to somebody's selfish desires, but somehow or other directing them to Krishna's devotional service. The conch is about to blow at this moment, so we excuse ourselves. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
And we'll take any questions after this. Any other comments?
Tamaham bhajami. Angariyata satem Priya Premanti Payanti Panti Kayanti Shiram Jaganti Aja Shivaya Sadhu Palayasya Govinda Anipircham Namahami Govinda Haripurusham Namahami Govinda Haripurusham Namahami
By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him, ecstatic prema emanates. Combined ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is ocean mercy, friend of the poor and auxiliary master of the devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us a shade from His feet. May your fame spread all over the good work. We take shelter at the street.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Janitai Prabhu. Arjuna Prabhu.
Jaya Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Afterglow. Anuj Prabhu, you have a few minutes to stay over time with us.
Yes, sure, bro.
Thank you. Ishwari Sundari Spirit Soul.
Hare Krishna, and thank you for class. Sorry, I came in just a little late to class, so my apologies. But my question is, I'm just a little confused, I guess, with having desires or wishes or praying to Krishna for certain things. I mean, I have a personal wish that I want to retire, or at least be able to be allowed to work from home, because I just got a house. I bought a house in Alachua, which is for retirement. I wanted to plan early and be able to be set for when I do retire. I don't want to be paying for a home at that age. So, but now that I have it, and I'm so close to the devotees over there, and it's just brings me a different level of consciousness, Krishna consciousness when I'm there, as opposed to working in New York City and commuting and living in New Jersey. And so it's just such a distraction from your what you could be doing more service is what I'm trying to say. So I have a deep desire, and I wish it all the time, like, that Krishna would grant me either some miracle that allow me to work from home, or that somehow I could retire sooner and be there. So are all desires and wishes not good to have? Should we just pray to Krishna every day and say, whatever you will be, I'm happy with that? So I guess that's where my confusion is. Is it wrong to wish a desire?
No. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Such a nice question. And congratulations on your move and the house.
Thank you.
No, so our desires are not bad at all, actually. Even our material desires, it's not, sometimes we kind of feel like we need to, and this is not even just a material desire, it's deeper than that, but sometimes we feel like we have a material desire, and like we have to keep it so close to chest. But Krishna knows our entire heart, right? So it's important to be able to share that and again own that if we have something that's very strong. But in this case, this desire is actually more for your spiritual life, right? Like your own growth. That's a beautiful desire to have, and there's nothing wrong with that. The point that I was making is that whether we have a spiritual desire or a material-based desire, um, regardless, we should also we can put that out there and see what Krishna's plan is. And based off what things happen and doors open and some doors close, we can start getting an inkling sometimes of what Krishna's plan is for us. And we should still always be open that if things go a certain way and we're seeing that we're trying, just the example I was giving of Srila Prabhupada in Jhansi before he came in 1953, he thought that he was going to be staying there and starting this League of Devotees there. And that was his mission. But Krishna had a bigger plan for him, right? So his desire was pure. It was always pure. But sometimes Krishna kind of gives us a little bit of the runaround, but not really, but he'll give us kind of like he won't let one thing happen because something better might happen. And so the point I was just making is for us to be open to that. If you're seeing that you're able to be situated down there, things are kind of smoothly coming together, I think that's a great sign for you that that's a wonderful desire and that's being, encouraged. But the point I was just making was that we should be open to seeing how Krishna's plan, if things are falling apart, how there might be an aspect of Krishna's plan that's really taking place for us. Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like it's okay to have the desires and hopefully they're good desires, but if there's a
Yeah.
detour in those desires, see that as as Krishna's plan too.
Yeah, yeah, and that there might be some purification that's needed that we need to go through. That can be there. So yeah, yes, of course.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
very well. Thank you for the question.
So is it okay to kind of sort of frame Krishna? Krishna, please answer my prayer the way I want you to answer my prayer. But it's not in regards to Ishwari Sundari. Her desire is pure. It's just the way I pray.
What's the desire here, Prabhu?
I don't know, being audited by IRS, for example. Krishna, please get me out of this. So I'm kind of framing Krishna. Krishna, I want this outcome from my prayer. Am I a pure devotee yet?
The way I understand it and look at it, we can take all our desires. Like there's no part of us that Krishna doesn't love. And I think we need to understand that. Sometimes in the guise of like purity and spirituality, we can think that there's part like Krishna already knows all parts of us, and we think we can hide some of them and kind of sanitize ourselves, right? Like we're gonna show, sometimes we can kind of lie to the devotees, right? We're like, oh, like, I'm like this here, but I'm like that there. We can't really do that with Krishna. We have to understand that he's in our heart and he understands all of us. So we can bring all of us to him. Now, whether that desire will be fulfilled and fulfilled in the way we want, that's not up to us. And I think that's the part that's hard to let go of, but we need to let go of that attachment to that specific outcome in a specific way. And in it can get even worse if we're thinking, Krishna, you only love me if you'll do it this way. And we start to put conditions on our love, and that actually doesn't become love, that becomes a business arrangement, right? And that goes to this demigod relationship that we're talking about, the transactional relationship, where Vikrasura with Lord Shiva, who, Lord Shiva is, I don't even think we can consider him in the demigod column because it's a very special tattva. But with Lord Brahma, Hiranyakashipu, there's so many examples, but this transactional of like, I'm doing this, so provide this in this way, in a very specific way. That's not love. That's a business deal. But if we love Krishna, we can share all our desires, but then know that and have faith that he'll execute in the best way possible. And it's hard to see in the moment. I find like there's times, and I'm not sitting here saying that Like sometimes I'm having these desires in my own life, and I'm thinking, Krishna, are you even hearing me? Like, are you even there? You know, like what's going on here? Because I don't feel like any of this is coming in any way that I thought, right? Like it's none of it's happening in the way I thought. But I have seen in my life so far that over time, like things will happen not in the way I expected, but in ways that were beneficial for me and my growth. And it's made sense why it had happened that way. And I see also situations where Krishna has really protected me from negative people, energy, situations that wouldn't be good for me. And I thought in my, ego, thought that those were perfect and those are, good for me. So sometimes we can't see what's going to be happening. Anyway, long answer to your wonderful question, but yeah, we certainly can bring those desires. I think being attached to them being fulfilled in a certain way is not always the most helpful for us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, we choose miracles. We've tried living by our desires and by the way we think everything should play out, but there's no room for miracles. There's no room for Krishna's mercy.
Yeah.
It's boring. So we choose miracles, Krishna miracles. Ishwari Sundar, I saw your hand was up briefly. Was it in approval?
I think it stayed up from before, but I wanted to share. I'm gonna really really quick story to show you, how much fun Krishna has with us. I think. Um, Before the pandemic, I think it was 2019, I was sort of dating somebody and he was a nightmare. And I broke up with him and I said, oh, Krishna, please, put somebody in my life that's good, that's this, or whatever. So I started praying, like, I'm tired of this. And within 10 minutes of saying that, I went to a funeral and this man just starts to follow me through the whole day. And I said, oh, Krishna, you're answering my prayers. I actually believed it. So 2 years later, engagement, almost married, almost moving to Texas. It was a nightmare. And if Ramuna Jaya is on this call, she knows about the nightmare. But then I said to myself, like, was that me being delusional or was that you putting something else, like we just said, it's a purification that I had to go through. And it was a terrible, terrible relationship. But honestly, at the end, it brought me closer to Krishna consciousness. And it helped me to realize so many things that even though I had to go through a lot in those 2 years of this tumultuous relationship, at the end of the day, like I am thankful for it. I resent the pain that I went through, but not so much the end result. So I think it was like I gave you what you want, and then it wasn't really what you wanted because I wasn't clear on what my wish. I wasn't clear on it. I wasn't really saying what I wanted. I just blurted out something and then I believed some delusion. But at the end of the day, it was like I don't think I would be here, or maybe I would be here, but I got here faster because of that. And it's a whole other story to explain why. But, you know, I just have to
Yeah.
say that. I think it's just fun that he has with us. Like be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Or be clear on your wishes. Be
Yeah.
clear. Be
Yeah.
pure. Like you
Yeah.
said, be pure on your wishes.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. Certainly, like relationships are some of the toughest things, especially when they don't work out and when they're challenging. So a lot of empathy for that. And it was like that. It reminds me of the example I gave during the class of one of my friends who, I mentioned he's going through some challenges right now, but he was telling me that he had his goal to like make a lot of money, and yeah, he did really well actually. And he was telling me that, and he's like in his mid 30s or early 40s, and he's like, I don't have to work ever again if I don't want to in his life. And it's like a position that a lot of people would want to be in, very enviable from a material perspective. But he's like lost his health and going through so many challenges. And he was telling me that, like I wanted this and I was so focused on this. And he's like, Krishna gave it to me in such a way though that I never wanted again. Like I never want to like deal with that again. And he's like purified the whole false ego as it relates to that. So yeah, and the one point that I just want to make really quickly also, and we also have another hand, is that it's important for us to like you, and I love how you framed it, Prabhu, where you're talking about like what do I learn from this, right? Like how do I learn, how do I move from this? Because I think sometimes I have noticed in the devotee community that like under the guise of not taking accountability or not learning our lessons or purifying ourselves, we can be like, this is Krishna's desire, right? Or like, this is Krishna's plan for me. And it's not that Krishna, then it's like the question becomes, does Krishna want us to go through pain and suffering? Like, does he want us to, is he sadistic, right? In that way. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Krishna actually wants the best for us. But sometimes we don't even know, like you said, what's best for us. And so he's helping us go through the process and if we're accountable and we learn from our mistakes, then we can actually be supported in making better decisions going forward. So it's like an important balance. I hope that makes sense, but I do feel like sometimes we can become like when bad things happen, it's like, oh, this is just Krishna's desire. This is meant to happen. Yes, but we should also see what is our karmic play in it? What are our lessons that we can learn from this negative any negativity in our life? And if we find that if like it's like putting in our effort and then praying to Krishna, like the Damodar Leela, right? Like we can control our effort and then there's mercy. Both sides are there, but we should look at our effort always and see how is our mindset impeding? What are things that we can heal, work on? Where are places we can get guidance from and then improve. And then Krishna, we'll find that Krishna reciprocates even more with that because he sees our effort. Um, does that help, by the way, with that point? Okay. And then we had a hand as well.
Min.
Min, yes.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class. I was thinking about what we heard in the class, this notion of being a well-wisher of someone and loving someone. I heard something that sort of blew my mind a little bit last week when one of my teachers said that love is not necessarily an emotion, but a disposition. And you mentioned how Prabhupada would always end his letters with, signing, you're a ever well wisher. And he stresses it so much at the end of when Srimad Bhagavatam, in the chapter where Dhruva Maharaj goes back home, he mentions it a few times very emphatically that we could all be like Dhruva Maharaj. And if we could be a well-wisher of everyone, we could go back home. And so, I remember thinking, oh, I'll never get there. How could I ever be a well-wisher of everyone? I just wanted to ask if there's a difference, when Prabhupada says that and he tells everyone, I'm your well-wisher, instead of say, love or something. I'm wondering if there's difference actually between being a well-wisher of somebody and loving someone. Because being a well-wisher, it's sometimes it could kind of sound maybe a little removed. Or you could, say that maybe to someone you don't know, and I guess you could also say love. But yeah,
That's a great point, and thank you for sharing that. I never thought about it that way, with the distinction. What's coming to my heart is that I feel that Srila Prabhupada saying that he's the ever well wisher is deeper than saying he loves someone. Because I think the way that like, signing even a letter like love this person, um, I think in this world we actually don't even really know what love is, like at its core. I think so I think it's become so like kind of like we know romantic love or like falling in love with someone. And I think maybe the closest that we can feel to love is like the relationship between a parent and a child in a lot of ways. There's like this such a deep love that can be there. But it's like I think Prabhupada is really saying that beyond any form of like conception of this, because most of the love in this world that we like that we're familiar with is very like transactional. It's like you do something for me, I do something for you. And that's the relationship. Not necessarily love. Um, Prabhupada's talking about something very different, where that he's always there for us. He's always wishing us well in the high, at the highest of levels, right? From like the material body, the lowest of levels, physical, mental, emotional, but then spiritually. And so, yeah, I think there's a comment in the chat that I just saw that um, it's yeah, exactly. It's an overused word that's lost its deeper meaning. And so I think that's where ever well wisher is even deeper than the commonly used kind of meaning of love. I think people have lost the sense of what it actually means to love someone in this world, in the deepest of senses.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, this is giving me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's my reflection on it, and I would be open to hearing, how you're reflecting on it as well. I think there's so many different levels of it, and I think a lot of us can say, to be honest, like um, until we came to devotional life, and I can speak for myself, and I come from a wonderful family and loving family in so many ways, but I do feel like the spiritual love of Guru, of the Vaishnavas, like it's in some ways it adds an even deeper dimension to experiencing love at what it really means, at on a spiritual level. And I think not everyone has that experience, unfortunately. And that's what Srila Prabhupada actually came to share. And that's like the Vrindavan consciousness that he came to share, that it's a very different experience from like what people are used to experiencing in the material world. And
Yeah,
it can be a little disconcerting too.
yeah, I like how you said that being a well-wisher can even be deeper than saying that you love them. And of course, we use that word so much, or at least in the West, even directed towards divine, right, or Krishna. I want to love him. I want him to love me. He loves me, which, yeah, sometimes I think about that. Like, what does it really mean to love God? I can't remember exactly, but does Krishna tell Arjuna the same thing, that he's is his well-wisher in Bhagavad Gita? Maybe he doesn't. I can't remember.
We have to go through the verses. If anyone, I don't know, Anand Bihari Prabhu, if you want to jump in here, trying to think. Um, but we can look into that. What he
Yeah,
specifically says.
thank you.
Yeah. But there are many places he is very, very encouraging to Arjuna throughout the Gita, and he you can see very clearly that he's a well-wisher of his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about specific verses, but that's a little bit of a deeper reflection.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Speaking of deeper reflections, Bhima Prabhu.
Bhima Prabhu, please. By the way, one of these days, I need Bhima Prabhu to share. So this is an interesting story. It's an incredible story, but like he probably doesn't remember this even, but probably about 15 years ago, it was His Holiness Radhanath Swami's Vyas Puja, and we celebrated it in New Jersey. And I happened to be there, and was based in New Jersey, and am based in New Jersey now as well. Um, and he shared an incredible story that I would love to hear again, about how he had a boxing background and he challenged Maharaj. I think, if I might be getting this incorrect, but he challenged Maharaj, talking about the strength of the devotees and like the six Goswamis and seeing them, and then Maharaj really gave him the humble pie. It's an incredible story. And Prabhu shared, I think he shared at the Vyas Puja, and I was blown away by it. So we have to hear that one day, if not today. I would love to hear that again. Am I remembering it correctly, Prabhu, or am I just completely delusional here?
Well, it was that, of course, I was a Bhakta and I had been living with Maharaj. I'm not going to tell the story, but the arc of it was that I challenged him because I didn't believe that this was a perennial philosophy. I was studying philosophy at the time, not a very smart guy, but I was studying philosophy. And Maharaj had me cornered on all ends. But the one thing I did notice was that at the time, the devotees that surrounded me were very frail, and very sickly. Of course, these were devotees who were living at New Vrindavan when they were eating, and a lot of devotees were performing back in the day, were performing severe austerities, lots of fasting, lots of only eating a little bit. So I sort of said, well, this philosophy isn't complete because, the body is a lump of material ignorance with a network of paths leading to death. So there was this sort of like anti-health type of thing, and that's what I was majoring in. I was even though I was taking philosophy, I was majoring in physiology and sports science and nutrition and etc. But anyways, long story short, I challenged him in front of others, and he took up the challenge, and that was the story. And in the end, which was pretty harrowing, it was pretty outrageous. He defeated me, and my heart was changed as to the miracle that Krishna is the strength of the strong. And Maharaj, came through with that. And it was one of the defining moments that I realized that Krishna had Maharaj's back. And if Krishna has your back, then no one can defeat you. So
you had you were like doing boxing. You had a boxing background at that time. So
yeah, I was actually
team,
just
right?
I was just coming off the season. So I was in fantastic shape. I was an amateur fighter, so it wasn't that I, went into those championship rounds or anything. It was only 3 rounds and stuff. Maharaj knew better, though. He watched me over the months that I lived with him. It was just him and I and Krishna Kata, maybe 1 or 2 other devotees that would come, bustling through on Harinam or book distribution. This was at Ohio University. And, and at that time I was still going to college, but living at the temple. And I had just finished up the season. And of course, my mind was on the body, and how to best keep it and et cetera, how to, make the body your temple. That was another thing. It was like, isn't the body your temple? Then why is everybody so, treating their body so badly? Why is everybody so thin? Why are the Goswamis look like they're going to break? And I thought, how can the philosophy, any excuse not to follow the 4 regulative principles was what it was all about. That's what you do when you're a bhakta. Like, I cannot believe that I'm going to have to make these vows. I better find a reason not to make these vows. And Maharaj, showed me in no uncertain terms, in such a miraculous way that, Krishna is your strength, no matter who you are or what position you're in. I'd like to get back to the important subject matter at hand, which would be the concept, the thing itself of love. And I don't myself personally learning by the school of hard knocks what is love, but I will quote from someone who wrote many books, many plays about love. The bard himself, Shakespeare. Hold on for a second. Paula, you got to back off. Yeah, you got to go in. My wife has the phone, listening to the class in the same room on a different phone. So I didn't want the Akashvani. But anyways, what Shakespeare said, okay? So listen up. I will quote this slowly, and then I will very briefly, because it's the end of class, go over what this means in regards to the breakdown of what love with the capital L really means. So I begin. Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks upon tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark is a ship, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not, with his brief hours and weeks, but beats it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. And so very quickly, let not the marriage of true minds, this is us. Why are our minds true? Because we're reading the truth with a capital T. So we are married in this movement to each other because we're all one big family and we all seek to have that same mind. Admit impediments. How many times did Prabhupada say there is no impediment to devotional service? Love is not all love which alters when alteration finds. Did Prabhupada cease loving the devotees who fell away and then came back, or the sannyasis who fell? Did Krishna cease loving us when we turned our faces away and came to this place? Or bends with the remover to remove. Now, I take this as a very profound statement because that's what Krishna does. He brings you close, gives you some ruchi, some taste, and then he pulls away. And then you're like, oh my God, I remember that taste, that ecstasy, that nectar at the kirtan, or when I was talking to Guru Maharaj, or when I was listening to Prabhupada, or when I was chanting my rounds, or when I was just sitting silent and wondering at this wonderful creation that Krishna, this sandbox that Krishna has given me. All of a sudden Krishna will move away and give us some distress, like the pearl, the irritation for the pearl that makes the pearl. It's the irritation is just as dear. It's Krishna's separation from us, which is as important as his nearness to us. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark. What Shakespeare says here is that like a star to every wandering bark, like a ship sets out to sea on the ocean, like us. We're set out to sea on this ocean and we have to navigate. But what are we ever looking at? What is this? What is that star that's an ever fixed mark? And that is Prabhupada's example. That is scripture. That is Leela. We just stare at that. That's love. Not whether we fail it or come up short or go to the opposite extreme and reject, but that there is an ever fixed mark. A love is a thing unto itself. It is not obedient to us. We are obedient to love. Whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken, which means we do not know, we cannot even begin to know the value of love, of Krishna's love. And then Shakespeare goes on to say, and he writes the word love here with a capital L, meaning it's a personification of the divine. It's a manifestation, a thing in unto itself. When you put a capital between something, it becomes a proper noun. It becomes a name. So love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks. This is talking about, of course, the material world and time taking away our youth, our flourish, the so-called beauty of youth, that we're attracted. Love's not time's fool. Love is not even conditioned to time. Though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. So you ever see the Grim Reaper? He carries a sickle. He reaps. Just like Krishna on the battlefield with Kurukshetra, when he showed Arjun his universal form, he was consuming everybody in his teeth. His teeth were gnashing upon all the soldiers. Okay, so that's that bending sickle. Well, guess what? Love is still there, despite the fact that the good Lord comes and reaps us all away. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom, meaning that love is always there for us. And then Shakespeare qualifies the whole thing. If this be error, if I'm wrong in this of what love truly is, and you can prove it, then I never wrote this, nor any man ever loved. And that goes to show that we may not have ourselves or our own examples, or maybe the examples around us of a steady love, a love that's a never fixed mark, but we sure do in Srila Prabhupada's example, in his Leela. from his childhood all the way straight through to his the order given by his spiritual master, all the way through to his trip on the Jaladuta, all the way through to his getting off at the dock in Boston, and then onward to the Bowery. He was there. There was a capital L behind what Prabhupada was doing. And he never, even though Krishna took away his Bhagavatam and his Bhagavad Gita and had someone strike him on the Bowery, his roommate, even though he was all alone, even though all his plans in India were brought to nothing, he just ever fixed. Prabhupada was ever fixed. So we have this last line, I never writ, obviously we all know Shakespeare wrote, nor no man ever loved. We know for a fact, based upon example, that Prabhupada truly did love Krishna. So this is what love is. It's not something we possess. It is something we aim for, like a star, and that we have that example that it will all turn out okay and everything will be all right if we simply follow in Prabhupada's footsteps. Thank you very much for listening to my diatribe here. I've always been inspired by triangulating Shakespeare or even Christianity or any other type of writing with what Prabhupada and Krishna says with our Shastra. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Mic drop there. I think that's a good ending to the class. Gives us things to reflect on. Good meditation on Srila Prabhupada as well. It was a disappearance day yesterday. So thank you for threading that through. And by the way, what year was this, the story with Maharaj?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I had to switch to speaker. Hold on, I got to get over the fact that I'm blushing because I'm embarrassed about rambling on every day. That was 1980.
Wow.
1980. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I just wandered. I wandered into Maharaj. This is with Adi Purush, the Prasadam distribution. This reason why that I met Maharaj was we found out the team, we were off season, so we were now allowed to eat because we would have to lose 20 or 30 pounds, 20% of our weight before we weighed in for a fight, because everybody fought 2 or 3 weight classes before what we normally carried. So we were always hungry. And then we found out that Maharaj was making these 6-course meals in school every Wednesday, and that there was a free feast on Sunday. And when you're a college student, free food, right?
Free food.
And our boxing coach, Dr. Mung Ji, who was from Burma, he knew Maharaj. He was a doctor. He was Dr. Mung Ji, and he was a former colonel in the Burmese army before the terrible atrocities. But he said that oh, listen, if you guys want endurance, then you should eat less meat. The less meat you eat, the more endurance you'll get, because your body will not be using all its facilities to digest something that's not even supposed to be in your body. So we said, well, how are we supposed to learn to become vegetarians? And he says, well, this Swami gives a class every Wednesday and has feasts every Sunday, and it's all you can eat. Well, that's all he had to say. It's all you can eat. And we would go, like 6 of us, from lightweight, which is what I was, to all the way to the heavyweights. And we would sit in front of Maharaj. Sometimes it would just be us, especially on Sundays, because he had just opened up. He had just taken sannyas. And he would serve us alone. It was just him. He would go in and cook all day, and Maharaj would serve us. We would sit in a circle, and he would come in and serve us like an Italian mama, like a nana coming in out of the kitchen. And he would keep coming. He would leave, and then he'd come back in with a pot full of halava. That was the big one. At the end, with the halava that he would make with the fruit. And he would, he'd come in with the chapatis. He just flipped, and he'd come in with the dal, and he'd just keep coming and feeding us. And we would eat until we couldn't. He wouldn't he would, when we'd say, I've had enough at seconds and thirds, he would say, would you want some more? And we'd say, no, Maharaj, we're stuffed. And then he would go, oh, okay. And then he would scoop more. And then he said, it would be an offense against God if you didn't finish this. So he was literally poisoning us with prasad. And he would have us then afterwards, he would have us all lay on our left-hand side for digestion. I believe, if I've got that right, like if you lay on your left-hand side and you cock your elbow and put your chin on your open palm, and he would tell us stories. And we would listen to the stories, which later turned into The Journey Home. But this was many years before he even decided to write it. He would tell us stories about how he got to India and who he met. I mean, these were unexpurgated. These were uncensored stories. He knew he could speak straight without having to, because he wasn't speaking to devotees. He was speaking to people that just wanted to hear the street version of everything. And so he told us stories, and we became utterly fascinated with who Maharaj was, because here he was a monk, but had been through, the whole world and experienced so much. And the process by which he came to Krishna consciousness was instantly relatable to us, because he told us a story. Stories are very important for people to relate to. So it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time to be in his association at that time.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really nectar to my ears and my heart. So thank you for sharing it. And Anuj, do you want to wrap up our call?
Yeah, thank you. I want to wrap up by thanking Anuj Prabhu for the wonderful class, for the wonderful Q&A during the Afterglow. I want to thank Bhima for being Bhima. Thank you so much for bringing in Shakespeare and boxing and street version of things. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Okay, we would like to request Saurabh Prabhu to recite the Maha Mantra to finish the offering. Hare Krishna, Saurabh Prabhu. Let's do it.
Lots of love, respect, and devotion to all of you. Lots of unconditional love, devotion, and respect to all of you. Just wanted to share something inspired. So when you have this unconditional love for Krishna, all of our friends, and sincere, I fall at the feet of Sadhvi Devi. I see your devotion, your lotus feet. Anyhow, when you see the love of Krishna and everything, sometimes you hear songs and so forth, and you end up, your favorite songs, you end up hearing Krishna talking to you. So I'll just share 2 lines. I know we're at the end. You don't know how you met me. Let's think that this is Krishna talking to us, okay? Singing to us. It's quite powerful. You don't know how you met me. You don't know why. You can't turn around and say goodbye. All you know is when I'm with you, I make you free and swim through your veins like a fish in the sea. Sing and follow me, everything is all right. I'll be the one to tuck you in at night. And if you want to leave, I can guarantee you won't find nobody else like me. Sing and follow me, everything is all right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anuj Prabhu ki jai. All the assembled devotees ki jai. Thank you very much.